Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, good. I wanted to ask a quick question. Is my
Go ahead.
video okay?
It's a little blurry. Is that normal for you?
Not normal. I kind of feel like sometimes it's very clear, and today it's like kind of weird. So
Hmm.
I'll fix that over time.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay, so yeah, we've got a pretty good audience, I think, today. We got about 40 RSVPs, so we should hopefully see most of those people come towards the start or like the middle. So should
Sounds
be
good.
good. Mhm.
Yeah. Sounds like a good turnout.
Yeah, I also made you the co-host, and so
Awesome.
if you want to just try checking your controls,
Yeah. Sure.
that'd be great.
Okay. I'm
Okay.
just gonna see if I can share just so that just working it out, I guess.
Okay.
This did this work? Okay, that's probably not the right screen. One moment. This
Okay.
is probably the right screen. Okay, so I'm just setting it up and everything.
Yeah, yeah. Hasn't really started, so you're in
Yeah,
good shape right now.
okay.
Okay. And let me see here. I wonder how we want to set this up. Okay, so um, I have you to the right-hand side of my screen, and then
Okay.
the main presentation is actually like the full screen. Um, and that's how I'm setting it up for Zoom. But I know like you
Okay,
can change the view like however you
cool.
want, side by side, gallery, or whatever you all like. So it should be fine.
Yeah, when I present my screen like this, it's just showing me a very limited version of Zoom. Um, so FYI, I don't know if there's I'm usually using Teams, so Zooms, I'm still like about Zoom. Anyways, so I won't be able to see the chat looking like this. So yeah.
Okay. Well,
So
yeah,
feel free to just interrupt me if there's a question in the chat. I want this to be more of an interactive discussion anyways. So hopefully people will unmute and just, kind of ask questions from there and things like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. If anybody who's here already wants to just kind of take a moment to like say hello and introduce
Yeah.
themselves, feel free to do so. Um, like I said, usually we have a lot of people come in a little bit towards the beginning and after, so expect more people on the way.
No worries. Yeah, feel free to unmute.
Hi,
Hi, Bradley.
I'm a student at a boot camp right now, so I was kind of excited to hear your story.
Yeah, yeah. I was hoping to do maybe kind of a poll later on before before we start, just to see kind of where everyone is in their journey, or what kind of disciplines we're kind of from. There is a raised hand feature, right, in Zoom, if I'm not wrong. Okay,
That's
awesome.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we'll just do a quick like, hey, can you let me know what kind of discipline you're from, and or yeah, I'm thinking that most of us are probably software engineers, but I could be wrong. Yeah.
And we'll reiterate this message as well, like, when, like
Yeah,
we've got
when
a
we
little bit
actually
more
start.
people. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So no worries if
absolutely.
you are late to this. But yeah, it's networking. So just feel free to like say hello, tell us about yourself a little bit.
Hi guys, my name is Ryan. So I started out as like a marketing and operations person, and I got into Salesforce development. And then I would kind of supplement that with like Linux on Python or Python scripts on Linux. So eventually I kind of decided that I wanted to go full stack. So I
Cool.
took a boot camp this last, pretty much like May to September, and just graduated. So I'm looking for my first like real full stack job.
You and I have very similar journeys then, actually, to be honest. So I'll talk about more about that later on. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was in marketing and sales for like 5 years too, and then I hopped over.
I started as a marketing guy for maybe like 6 months, and it was at a startup, so there was a lot of holes. And I
Yeah,
really liked in the technical stuff, so I jumped into the Salesforce part, and very
yeah.
similar.
Yeah, I was also working on Salesforce certifications for a period of my marketing career too. So I totally know where you are with that.
That's cool. I didn't really use Salesforce, but like it was something that, I was exposed to a little bit. And then it was a job that I was going to do, but then I kind of, changed my mind last moment because I felt like I wasn't the right fit. So yeah, I mean, it might have been a good chance to at least study, that API or whatever. I'm pretty sure if I looked at it again today, I'd probably feel more than confident, but it was at a time when I was like just beginning. And I also started off like in marketing too. So I have a lot of friends here who are marketers before they
Yeah,
became web developers.
yeah. And if you're just joining, we're just gonna wait a few more minutes to get started. So thank you for your patience.
Yeah, definitely. It's networking hour. So feel free to just say hello and tell us about yourself if you feel brave enough.
My name's Aaron. So far, I'm still at the beginning of my own journey. I did go to college for some computer science stuff, but never actually completed. So I do have questions about that if it's even possible to even get into the computer field without actually having a degree at all.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but other than that, like I do have some pretty good skills. I know like a variety of languages. I've been practicing at least for a few years just on my own like little projects. Um, I do have a few other questions, but like I'm going to leave it like that at that. So
Yeah, it's really casual right now. Like before we get into the presentation, right? Like, and we can start the presentation whenever you're ready, Michelle. Like,
Okay.
but yeah, just in general, right? Like, you don't necessarily need a degree these days to get a computer programming job. Or more specifically, I would say like in the realm of like web development. Um, the degree kind of helps you if you're thinking a lot about like, software or, like engineering, the actual engineering part, right? Which I think sometimes people kind of forget about when they learn to code. I think a lot of people kind of go down this rabbit hole of like, okay, I'm going to just study a whole bunch of tutorials, learn how to use like a framework like React or something like that. And then, yeah, that could be a job in itself, right? Like just being able to use the framework, build something. But then you kind of have to take a step back, like when you feel comfortable, right? And then you have to ask yourself, like, all right, so how does this continue? Like, what do I really want to do, like with, my powers per se, right? And like I find myself asking those questions too. Sometimes, like I'm like, all right, so what kind of real world problems can I actually solve? What kind of things, should I be focusing on? Like, are there things in my toolkit that I already can use to like solve a problem, or should I, you know, make that tool because maybe that tool doesn't exist? Things like that. That's where the engineering part comes into play. And a college degree, obviously, if you feel like you need that technical expertise to help you.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say that like, and just there's this tone very much in like computer programming, like what we do is that like you can be a total autodidact and make a great living. In fact, that's kind of where a lot of self-taught autodidacts make their living. So if you have some computer science background, you can leverage that, learn how to do the rest of the stuff, maybe even copy, like look at like what a bootcamp would teach, and then just learn it on your own for free on YouTube or take a couple of courses and get a great job and be making like, close to $100,000 within a few years. It's that this is like the perfect field to do that.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Real quick, I see Ryan also like raising his hand, so I don't want to ignore you. Like, and then I'll come back to like an answer. Michelle, if you want, you can give an input too, or you could start.
Yeah, sure. In that case, let's just get started. So thank you, everyone. Oh,
Wait, let's make sure we ask for
I thought
answer
Ryan
Ryan's
was the
question.
one who asked the
Oh,
question.
oh, dude, no, I was just like talking.
Oh, okay,
I was,
okay.
I was just like, this is
I
the
didn't
perfect
put two and
question.
two together. Okay, so you
Yeah.
raised your hand and then you asked the question anyway. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We're good. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyways, so thank you everyone for joining. My name is Michelle. I am currently a software engineer at Microsoft, and I'm here to talk today about kind of my journey to that. I kind of want this to be more of an interactive discussion. So feel free to raise your hand, put your question in the chat, or even just interrupt me, just so that we can get a discussion going. Just a quick kind of poll. I want to see how many are what kind of discipline you belong to. So I'm thinking if you are a software engineer or aspiring to be a software engineer, do you mind raising your hand real quick? Okay, so we've got a couple of that, but it looks like we're kind of not that many software engineers here.
I'm one of them. I'm just trying to figure out where this stupid hand raising emoji is.
All right, so it should be at the bottom, like where it says reactions. There should be like a little emoji bar that says
Oh,
raise
look
hand.
at that.
Yeah.
Sweet.
And there we go. Okay, so quite a few actually, never mind, maybe half. All right, so another question that I want to ask all of you is whether or not you're interested or just kind of here to know more about Microsoft Leap, so I can kind of maybe focus that on about that but a bit more later on. If you are, go ahead and raise your hand or continue raising your hand. Okay, awesome. All right, so anyway, let's get started. So we already started the recording. This is a quick reminder for myself in case I forgot to. So thank you, BJ. So a little bit about myself. I am a first generation immigrant. I hail from the country of Singapore. I kind of included a couple pictures here for that. The first one's kind of a picture of the city itself. And the second one is if you don't know about Singapore, there's a giant waterfall in the airport. So highly recommend everyone visit there, have fun there. It's a great tourism country. A little bit about myself as well. Oops, excuse me, went too fast. A little bit about my hobbies. I am a huge Critical Role nerd. Love the show. If you don't know what that is, it's a D&D show that's voiced by some veteran voice actors. I'm also a gamer. Couple of game titles I played: World of Warcraft back in college, Witcher 3, Assassin's Creed titles, and A Plague Tale of Innocence is something I just picked up. I'm also a huge foodie. Really love spicy food. 10 out of 10 any day. And yeah, that's a little bit about myself. So my career so far, let's see. I like a lot of people, I was a bootcamp grad. I went to Coding Dojo where I got the triple black belt and learned 3 full stacks: Python, C#, and Mean. Then later on, I was a developer support engineer for a year before somehow landing myself in the Microsoft Leap Apprenticeship program, and then converted to full-time employee FTE in Microsoft. So that's been my career so far in tech. The whole reason why we're here, how did I even get here? While I was creating the presentation for this, the slides for this presentation, I came across this quote from Walt Disney: "The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing." And it kind of rings true a lot for my journey, in a sense of like I was doing a lot of thinking and talking about it before I actually started doing it. And the only way you get started as a dev or engineer is really just by learning and starting to code. So it all started with a thought back when I was in my marketing days. And here's a little bit of snapshot of my marketing career as well. So I've got 5 years of experience in there. I was in a digital marketing agency. Then I was in promotional products, which is basically branded products, anything of a logo on it. I've probably done that. And then eventually I went to financial services, which I found out that I didn't really like financial services. And that started kind of the Coding Dojo world. And back in my digital marketing J's in Pixel Motion, that was my first introduction to what a dev person really is. And I got to know some web developers, and I went up to them like, hey, what you do is really cool. Can I talk to you more about it? And so we kind of talking, and that's how I kind of started with it. It was then kind of started learning on my own, Udemy courses, kind of books, whatever I could get my hands on. And then eventually it was me wanting to do my master's in computer science. Then that kind of small hiccup happened in terms of at that time I was an international student, so I couldn't actually afford education on my own in the United States. So I had to ask my parent, hey, mom and dad, can I do a master's in computer science? And they were like, no, it's too expensive. There was many reasons no, and they basically said I couldn't do it. So I thought, okay, fine, I'll just learn on my own. I'll do it as a hobby, maybe create a small business out of it. Who knows, whatever. It was just a hobby anyways. And so I kind of went on my marketing career. Then I went on into promotional products, which was really fun. All your creativity spun into one product. And eventually I got to work with some big companies like Netflix and Disney. And that's a small lanyard I even created for them. And that was a really good time. And like I said, I went to financial services. Didn't like it very much. Too formal, too strict, whatever I like to call it, not my jam. And then I eventually went to Coding Dojo. And the reason why I went to Coding Dojo, and this was a lot of deliberation in the end, in my part, was because I didn't want to spend too much money on a CS degree. And to answer one of your questions earlier, Aaron, no, you don't need a CS degree. You really don't. And like I said, I wanted to do my master's in it. I decided not to, and I'm really glad I didn't choose to. And Coding Dojo is one of those very intense programs. Like I said, three full stacks, Python, C#, and yeah. So that's how I kind of got started with dev. Any questions so far? I kind of went quickly on there. I tend to talk fast. Okay, sounds good. All right. So then like I said, I went into, I started my first tech job as a developer support engineer, which kind of combined my skills in marketing, account management, customer service, whatever you can name it, and use that in conjunction into becoming a developer support engineer. And during that time, I was like, I don't even know what I was thinking, but I had heard about the Microsoft Leap apprenticeship program from my old boot camp. And I was like, all right, maybe in 5 years, we'll think about it. Then I found out, hey, they're actually looking for people who are who are early in career, people who are just graduating from boot camp, basically, with 6 months of experience or something like that. So that was eventually I started applying to it, and it took me 3 attempts to get into the program. So if you're looking to enter the program, I highly recommend to you to reapply. A couple of requirements if you're interested in the program or applying to it. There's a 6 months experience that they ask for, but that's quite vague on their part. It could include anything between volunteering, personal projects, anything basically. If you've done a small thing for a startup loosely, they accept that. And they ask for 2 essays, mostly asking about how you got started and why you're so passionate about software development. And there's a couple of interviews as well. I've included a link to the program in case you're interested in applying to it. I believe they're actually opening up their application right now, don't quote me on this, for a new cohort. So what was the LEAP program like? So it was a 16-week program The first 4 weeks is a classroom period, and the remaining 12 weeks was basically working with an actual Microsoft team and working on their code base, etc. For me, I was placed into the SharePoint product, which probably many of you don't know about it. It's also in the same area as OneDrive and Teams, which may be more popular and you may have heard. And this was where I spent a good 60, 80 hours a week just grinding at this because I wanted so badly to get into Microsoft. And yeah, any questions about this so far? Oh, I see some chat.
Yeah, we can come into the chat. Like, I guess for anybody who didn't read the chat, if you want to ask questions, feel free to just like drop them in. And like every time Michelle takes breaks, she can read your questions as well. I think the first one came from Lindsay.
Okay, Lindsay. Here we go. I'm interested in your stack. Why Python C#? How did your stack influence your journey after my bootcamp? Why Python and C#? That's a good question. At that time, I had heard C# was very popular in my area, specifically in the Orange County, California area. And so it was like, okay, so I wanted a bootcamp that was kind of leaning towards there. And that's why I did. And as far as I know, Coding Dojo is one of the few bootcamps that does C# actually. And turns out that they're also very closely related with Microsoft since, Microsoft created C#. And so that was one of the things that influenced my decision to go into Coding Dojo. How did it influence my journey after bootcamp? Well, when you learn that kind of multiple languages, you tend to realize there's a pattern. And you can only really see that once you've learned multiple languages, I think. You see there's a pattern, the front end side, the back end side, whatever it is, but there's a pattern. How do you connect the two? And languages, even though they have OOP and whatnot, there's almost like you really can see the pattern there. And so for me, that influenced my journey quite a bit because I was able to see that pattern much easily, and I was able to like get into other languages like, okay, I can read that kind of. I don't have to know a full understanding of it, but I can kind of read what that is in, I don't know, Java or something. Yeah. And then let's see the next question here. How was my jump from Coding Dojo to my first software job? So my jump from Coding Dojo to my developer support engineer position, which let's just go back a few slides. That wasn't as hard as I thought it was. It actually took me, I started applying for a job, and this is something I actually recommend a lot of bootcamp grads, is to apply for jobs while you're still in bootcamp if you have the bandwidth to do so. I actually started applying during that time, and essentially I started applying about a month before I graduated out of bootcamp. And so when I graduated, it then took me another month to get a job. So it was about 2 months of job searching. Now, I was very loose in terms of like what I wanted to do. I just wanted my first job. Everyone says, in the tech industry, and this is true, your first job in the tech industry is just your first job. It literally doesn't matter. So I was able to find one that was able to play to my skills in terms of like marketing and sales. And I definitely recommend you look into your skills and see what you're good at and kind of play to your strengths there. And it was very nerve-wracking. I won't even lie. It was extremely nervous, like going into, I had no job, no nothing. This was a whole new industry. I knew no one. So it was definitely difficult. Definitely, make connections. If you had great friends that you had from your bootcamp, continue staying in touch. I certainly do. I'm still in touch with my old instructors from when I was in Coding Dojo. And a lot of people, the journey is a little bit different. Mine was fairly quick, and I think that was because I live in an area that had a lot of kind of tech companies already, a little bit. So it was a little easier there. Let me know if you have any particular questions that you have, Bradley. I'm happy to answer them. Okay. All right. So the next question, when you started in your new career, did you ever struggle with imposter syndrome? I can tell you for right now, at this time, I'm still struggling with that. And it's actually one of my points later on in my slides. I struggle with it every day. And I can tell you that when I talk to a lot of engineers in Microsoft, they struggle with it every day. And so it's one of those things that will never truly go away. And VJ, maybe you can talk about it as well, because I feel like we kind of talked about it before together. And it's something that it's you're when, especially for me now, I'm in an environment where I'm all in front of these talented engineers, much more talented, and you feel so small compared to them.
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, like I can talk about this too, like, and I think it's a good topic. And obviously feel free to continue on with your slides too, because I don't want to derail the presentation, but it's a huge topic. I think imposter syndrome is like something that it kind of is like yourself being like your worst critic, right? Like I think that that's kind of like what it is. We all kind of know at the end of the day what our own weaknesses are, because we're the ones who go to bed with it, right? And so you might like do a really good job presenting yourself, like in front of YouTube, right? Like I'm doing this meetup group or whatever, right? And that'll go to YouTube. Michelle, is doing the Zoom and doing meetup, and she's representing Microsoft in some ways. So she's like, going to feel like, oh yeah, like this is me. I'm, Microsoft person. End of the day, though, we all kind of like go home like with our own insecurities, which people don't really kind of see. It's like a hide and show kind of like act, if you will, right? But the thing is, like, like if you like somebody mentioned autodidact, I think that was Ryan earlier, which basically just kind of means to me like you're like somebody who self-directs, self-courses your own, destiny, if you will. So like those weaknesses can actually help you, right? Like if you're like, oh well, I'm not good at React, right? Or I feel like I'm just like stupid when I talk about engineering to other people. Like that thing is going to haunt you pretty much like every single day until you actually, address it. And so because those things are really big, you kind of have to piecemeal it and just be like, okay, all right, so maybe I really do, suck at public speaking. So you just practice a little bit more, at a little bit each day. If it's something like writing out like diagrams, like in UML or something like that, you just practice a little bit each day. And every time you do that, like every time you like, exercise a little in the direction of your weaknesses, you feel better about not being an imposter, right? And the more experience you gain, like the more confident you'll feel until like you really kind of can own, the role that you're in. So you're in Microsoft, great, you own it, right? Every day you kind of like self-address, self-correct, make your thing better. And then of course you get peer review. But again, it's a huge topic. I'm happy to talk about it some other time. But the best answer right here, I think for me at least, is that you just own your weaknesses and then you just kind of keep carrying forward and like try to build better. That's how I would kind of address the imposter syndrome.
Yeah. This kind of comes up with a story that I had during when I first landed in the Microsoft Leap Apprenticeship program, and I first landed into my team that I would work with. I said out loud, Microsoft is basically my dream job. So, that's it. That's bottom line for me. And one of the principal software engineers, which are software engineers are higher even than senior, came up to me one day and he's like, yeah, this is also my dream job and I still don't know how I got here. And you can kind of see that the imposter syndrome is still kind of there, even though he's been here for like 15 years and he knows all basically the entire code base. So it really doesn't ever go away. What you can do is just cope with it, like VJ and I said. Okay. All right, so we have another question here. You mentioned that Orange County has lots of companies looking for C# developers. Can you explain more? I want to get a job in OC. I can't remember exactly. Someone told me the history about this one time. I can't remember it. One of the major companies here started doing use their first language as use their language in C#, and then so other companies kind of followed doing that. Can't remember which company that is off the top of my head. But there is generally more of a prevalence of C# here. I hope that answers your question. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about next is what did I learn from this journey? So what did I learn? You don't have to go at it alone. Find your communities and mentors, you fit with them, I mean, the best communities that you fit with and mentors. And I've listed a couple that I've used here as well. But basically, when you start this journey, you know, you feel like you're kind of this lone man in a desert here. And it's really tough. I spent long nights on my own, like still coding by like 8, 9 p.m., just working at it. And just continue to code. And it makes it so much easier, and it actually accelerated my career much faster when I started getting to know these communities. And so yeah, definitely get into touch with that. So I've listed a couple here, HackBuddy, obviously here. So there's that. And Mentor Mesh, which is led by Jay Taylor, a great PM, great mentor of mine. He's amazing. Love Jay Taylor. And another one called League of Feminist Coders, a great community, a very supportive environment. Thank you, Eleni, for posting that. League of Feminist Coders is a great community, supportive environment. If you're just like unsure how to even do something and you have dumb questions, they're great for doing that. And Commit Your Code is a very, very popular one, led by Danny Thompson, who has kind of dedicated its life to kind of teaching others how to code and stuff like that. So definitely look at their content. All right, so I think I kind of talked about this earlier. We all have our own skills, whether skills, good, bad, whatever, but use them, identify them, and use them to your strengths. And if you're having trouble like figuring out what your skills are, do some self-reflection, or even ask your peers or your friends or your family, whatever it is, and just ask them, hey, what do you think I'm good at? Like, what am I good at? And then I eventually kind of find out I'm kind of good at project management, that kind of thing. So definitely do that. And when I talk about these kind of what I learned, this is what I've learned throughout my entire journey, going through the bootcamp and getting here to finally Microsoft. So the next slide I have, this is all dedicated to you. So when I started this journey, I wasn't even really sure what I really wanted. I didn't even know I wanted to be in Microsoft. I had no idea what I wanted. So I kind of want to dedicate the time to asking yourself, what is it that you actually want? What do you want in your career? And your career doesn't have to be this doesn't have to be your only career. I've heard people who change their careers 3-4 times. But the thing is that what makes you happy here exactly? And figure out your priorities and your goals, right? Like for me, when I was looking at different companies, I'd be like, why did I want to work with this company? What do I find cool about this company that inspires me? I think for me, from Microsoft, the reason why I wanted to go in there was I really liked one of their mission statement, which is to empower everyone on the planet. And that screams kind of like what I like to do. I got into kind of customer service, account management, because I want to help people. And it might not be like charity kind of work, but it's also helping people in a different way. So definitely look at your priorities and your goals and where do you want to be in terms of careers. And the next one, I come from a business background, so there's going to be a few business terms here, and kind of want to talk this concept about risk management. You kind of hear that mostly in investing terms, I think, and definitely ask yourself what your risk management is when it comes to your career. For me, I'm kind of a risky person. That's why I jumped into bootcamp, even though I had no prospects whatsoever outside of once I got out of the bootcamp. But look into that and see what you're comfortable with doing. You might also have like different priorities, like family or financial obligations, and do what's best for you. Figure that out. Thank you, Ryan. And the next one, health. This whole journey taught me that I cannot delay my health at all. When I say health, I meant mental and physical. That's something that I've realized that the more I focus on my health, the better I have been as a software engineer and just working my career. And being kind to yourself, and setting your own boundaries. And when I say being kind to yourself, hey, do you need to take the day off and take the night off and stop coding? Then take the night off. I'm sure everyone has heard of this term in the software engineering community. Burnout is a real thing. I can only tell you that I burned myself out quite a couple of times already. So if you can, please don't do that to yourself, and be sure to set your boundaries. For me, that means I don't look at work emails or work text at all during the weekend. Like, no excuses, unless there's a Sev 1 happening and someone needs to call me, and that's when I'll answer a call. But be sure to be kind to yourself and set boundaries here. How do I focus on health versus productivity? I think for me, the way how I see that is, I don't see that as two separate entities almost. The reason why I say that is, the more I continue to work on my health, continue to work out, etc., whatever, the more I found myself more productive. When you're a software engineer, think of it this way. It's kind of all about creative problem solving. It really is. And when you try to problem solve something when your mind or your body is extremely tired, you're not going to get anywhere with it. You really are not. So that's kind of how I for me, how I focused on my health is I work out a lot. I work out like 3-4 times a week now. I have a therapist that I talk to on, and when I say I focused on my health, I actually lost about 20 pounds this year. About 20 pounds, given the holidays and stuff. So yeah. Okay, thank you, appreciate that. All right, so the next slide. All right, so the next topic, networking. What is this? What is networking? And if you don't know what it is, it's basically creating your own professional connection base. I like to see it as a way to connect with. I also like to see it as a genuine connection to other people as well. I got to know a lot of great people that are going to go so much further in their careers than I ever will. But I got to learn from them, and I got to hear from them, and that's what inspires me to kind of go for Microsoft, and that's how I came to that point. And there's another point that I want to make is, when you do a lot of these networking activities, I guess what you like to call it, make sure you surround yourself with the people you want to be. So let's say you want to be a software engineer at Twitter. Sure, whatever. Go see if there's this engineer at Twitter that you can talk to on Twitter or at LinkedIn. And surround yourself with these people and hear from them, from their stories and how they got to be. Okay, and I think we had this topic earlier about imposter syndrome. It never really truly ever goes away. Like I said, I experience it every day. I sometimes will be like, what am I doing here? How am I still here? And why have they not fired me? So imposter syndrome is a continuous battle. And the way how I see it is kind of, for me at least, is to kind of embrace failure and learn from it. One of my things, what I like to do is that I like to kind of put kind of a journal of the things I accomplished this week. What did I actually do at work that, you know, made me somewhat successful? Okay, so maybe it was this bug I was chasing down for a good day and a half, like today, that I was finally able to find where the code lives for this specific part of this. So that's an achievement for me. So I really like that logging of achievements, and that's really worked for me so far. Okay, how did I do it? How did I get here? And I'll talk a little bit about my approach here. But basically, hold yourself accountable. You know, you're in charge of your own journey here. How you want to get to wherever you want to go. And the ways how I kind of did it was organizing myself. For example, my calendar. If it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist at all. I don't know that it exists at all. If you have a call with me and it's not on my calendar, be prepared, I'm going to forget about it, literally. And automation, and that sounds like a more techie term, but it kind of is kind of like that. Automate when you can, where you can in your life. Maybe it's housekeeping, maybe it's cleaning your car or something, you know, automate when you can, and if you can do it. But, you know, aside from holding yourself accountable, make sure that you lift yourself up as well. For me, I'm a very hard judgment of myself. And so I tend to see myself, oh my gosh, I haven't done it at all this week, nothing at all. But when you look at it, you know, maybe you just had a rough week, right? You'll do better next week. So definitely don't be too harsh on yourself. So I like to take this quick time to talk about one of my mentors, Jay Taylor, and how when you hold yourself accountable, what do you actually do? Okay, so that merely means you're working on yourself. And the two things that you should be doing is to improve your skills, so improving yourself and building your network. And those are the things you should be constantly doing if you want to advance your career. And I stole that completely from Jay Taylor, so feel free to go to him for more advice on that. And another business term here, the opportunity cost, which is basically the potential loss from a missed opportunity. The reason why I bring this up is to kind of bring up that you have so many opportunities in front of you. When you get out of boot camp, when you graduate out of it, you have so many things you want to do. You want to network, you want to code, you have 10 million projects that you want to do, but you don't have the time for. And so this is where I say, pick your battles. And this is why I say opportunity cost. Pick the best projects that you want to work on. Pick the networking events that are going to be great for you or whatever it is. But it's okay to have that potential loss. This is a very common thing, and focus on the things that's going to be best for you. Okay. Another one is adapt and evolve. With this kind of opportunities kind of conversation here, use that to adapt and evolve yourself. And that means improving your skills, your network, whatever it is. And yeah. Okay. Just want to reiterate, I am a very ordinary person. I am no one special. I have in my life have met many geniuses in when I was in Singapore, but I am nothing like that. So what I can say is that if you want to be extraordinary, all you have to do is put in the extra work. So yeah, be ready to make sacrifices and put in the hard work. Don't expect things to fall on your lap. You know, like I said, hold yourself accountable. And for me, I like to think of my career / life as a marathon of sprints. Some of you may know the agile process, right? By now, you know what sprints are. I hope you do. But if you don't, sprints are basically like this usually 2-week kind of grind of whatever work that needs to get done. And so I like to think of my 2-year kind of process of getting to Microsoft as basically a marathon of sprints. There were months where I was working 60, 80, 90 hours a week. And there were weekends where I'm just done. I can't code. I'm just done. But the most important thing is to make sure you never give up and you always get back up. It's not failure when you take a break, when you face a mistake. It's failure when you actually give up. And I put a thing that says make an impact there. The way how I see being most effective in these kind of sprints is figuring out what kind of impact you want to make. And that could mean, listening properly to people and hearing what they actually want it for example, from your job. What are they actually looking for? Listening to your customers and listening what they want. And so making that genuine impact is how you make that sprint work. Okay. Last but not least, wake up, kick ass, be kind, and repeat. Yeah. Any questions so far? Because I think we're coming to the close here. Okay. So what was the interview process like for your first job in software? Good question. So I had a couple of interviews. I remember one of the first interviews that I ever got in the tech industry. I came out of that interview crying, absolutely bawling out crying, because I was devastated how I did. And then I had really easy interviews. The position that I had for my developer support engineer position, I had FizzBuzz, which if you don't know what that is basically print out 1 to 100 in a for loop. Very easy question. And so it kind of varies, depends on which company you go to for their interview process. But that position was also less about technical and a little bit more about, client and account management. I also actually had in another interview process where I had received an offer to be a Salesforce kind of engineer, quote unquote, which kind of rings true to your story, Ryan, a little bit. And I decided not to take it, going towards more of, because I had skills in a client and account management. It was my first job in tech, so I didn't want to get too far away from that. So it really kind of depends on the company and where you're trying to aim for in terms of what your interview process is like. Some people have it really difficult. Some people grind leak code all day and they get it. Hey, that's totally up to you. Also kind of depends what kind of company you want to work for. Okay, another question, Aaron. Starting out, where would you recommend starting to look for your first computer job? My first computer job, does that include PowerPoint slides? I'm kidding. Where do I recommend? I think what one of my things was that definitely play to your strengths. If you have a previous career that like I did, look for those strengths in there. You may not find similarities, but there really is. Also, you don't necessarily have to start out as a software engineer. I was very stubborn about that, and I really wanted to be a software engineer, but I picked a role that wasn't really a software engineer at first. So look around, see what other job titles kind of speak to you, and when you first start out, it doesn't have to be your last job. Definitely don't think that. You definitely have the opportunity to look for other things later on. I hope that answers that question. I don't know if you were asking for more like geographic specifics or something like that. Next question. How did you conduct your job search? Throwing your resume everywhere, which is also the spray and pray method is what I hear it as. how much did your network come into play? Okay, so what were my job search strategies is basically this question. When I first got out of the boot camp, I basically did the spray and pray method. I remember applying for 250-ish jobs. I think that was the total, which is quite a few in 2 months, honestly. And that's basically how I got that job. But if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't do it that way. When you do the spray and pray method, it's you'll have a tendency to find a lot of these companies that kind of do the same thing too. You want, for me, the way how I see it is that you want to find a company that's most kind of best suited for you. So look into the research more about companies that you want to work for, what kind of industries you're looking into going into. Maybe there's something about what they do or their sustainability or something about them that you like the best, and kind of do it that way. But later on, how much did my network come into play? After that, my network came to play quite a bit. I started getting calls, or at least messages from startup companies that were kind of, I say startup very loosely, startup companies that were interested in working with me and stuff like that. And that's how I was like, okay, someone knows me and that person referred me, and it goes on and goes on. And when I started doing a lot of the LinkedIn stuff, especially, that's when I got to know a lot of different people. And eventually, when that ramped up to more and more, and when I finished the Leap apprenticeship, I eventually got interviews with Amazon and Twitter as well. So yeah, that was amazing. And some of it was through my network. People will refer you if they like you. So yeah, definitely work on your network if you can.
A lot of great advice here. And again, like, I feel like any of these topics can open up like their own like meetup or can of worms, if you will. But just like, I mean, like in general, right? Like to some of those last points, and even some of your earlier points, like I just want to like just add like a small little bit of thing that like I think helped for me as well. Like I think like the biggest thing is obviously like that whole part about like kindness, right? Like to yourself. Because let's face it, right? Like this stuff is hard. Like it's a very hard life being an engineer, software engineer, computer programmer. Because you're always, kind of like marathoning, right? Like you're kind of doing these sprints, like Michelle said. And, so like your mind is like, oh, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to get better. I got to get better. I got to get better. And like your body is like, kind of like not catching up with you, like, or it's not used to that. Right. Especially, I guess, like in this COVID times and all that, like, there's a lot of stress, right? There's a lot of stress to deal with. I think there's a lot of competition to deal with. There's a lot of, external factors to deal with. Even things like just keeping track of your own weight and stuff like that, that could be like a distraction as well. But I think like the best way to kind of like handle that is really like this whole kindness aspect, where you kind of like, you give yourself like a little bit of time to like back off and not think about like doing well or anything like that. You just kind of like go back to just being like, having fun, like being a teenager or something again, give yourself that space. Cause like when you do that, then, like you're able to kind of come back into it with a better mindset, and you're able to kind of look at maybe some problem that was really difficult for you, like in a different lens, right? A lot of times too, like when I'm like not coding, I kind of feel like I'm relaxing and I'm just enjoying, and suddenly like ideas bubble up in my head, and then I'll be like, oh yeah, I want to go try that out next time. As far as like interviewing and networking and stuff like that, and there's a lot of technical things that I think Michelle and I could share with you, but like the abstract part is, right, like daily try to make an improvement, right? Like that's like super important. Like try to make an improvement for yourself, right? Like we talked about weaknesses, kind of like being like you know, like the points that you kind of like pay attention to. If you kind of like are aware, self-aware of like what you might not be good at, you start focusing on that. And then you get to a certain point where it's like, okay, I know I have some weaknesses, but like focusing on them right now is probably not going to be the most effective thing for me. Let me go and look around my network and try to like find people who have solved these problems before, right? And you see how they did it with their journeys. Like this is kind of like what we're doing with Michelle. But you network, right? Like, and there's an old saying, I think, which I'll kind of quote, maybe I'll misquote, but I feel like your network is your money, right? That's how you're going to get paid. So the better your network, the more you'll probably make in your lifetime, right? Because network gives you your opportunities. First, you build a skill, and then you go and try to like improve like your network, right? Like you find the people who are doing the things you really want to do, ideally, and then you start looking for projects that they're doing and try to contribute to that. In my mind, if you're doing that already, you're already kind of hired, right? Because you're getting the skill that's going to make you like a lot of money in the future, whether you get it now or later, right? And it's kind of like how I look at it. As far as like the spray and pray method, look, I'll be honest with you. It is COVID time. It's 2021, 2022. It's really hard to get a job. But that said, like you can always network and talk to people. And so what if you spray and pray? If you spray and pray right now and you land some job, like Michelle said, it's your first job, right? Like, or it is a job and you treat it as such, right? You say, okay, I'm going into this with the assumption that this is my job, but I'm also going to build my career, right? And those two things can align over time. But what you really want to be doing is like perfecting your career. So later on, you can be choosy about the kind of experience and skills that you pick for yourself. And then it all becomes gravy because it like, you know, increments on itself. Because like over time you get like better experience and that leads you to better jobs and better pay. It's really how you want to be self-correcting. Anyway, again, I could do a lot of talks on this, but that's just kind of like, you know, just to add to like what Michelle's been saying so far.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think there's a quote here from Ryan, network is your net worth. Yeah, totally agree. Especially with like when you switch careers, if you want to switch another career out of tech, for example, then that's going to be your biggest thing. Your people that you know of is going to refer you to jobs. Like for example, this week when I had this meetup at my local gym, he was the director of, I don't know, product design, this product services or whatever for Hogue, which is a huge hospital chain. And he's like, yeah, if you want a job here, we can talk totally. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, nice. I think one of the questions Bradley have, you know, did I build my network with groups like HackBuddy or LinkedIn? Yes, to both. Totally. That's exactly how I did it. I am not someone who likes to post personal stuff at all on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, which is hilarious because I come from a marketing background. That means I should be good at it, right? But I'm not. I pretty much stick to meetup groups and LinkedIn. Do whatever you like to do. I know there's a lot of engineers that are also on Twitter. Definitely recommend that community as well because I heard that a lot of great things about that there. So yeah. Lindsay, you have a question as well. You have given us a lot of lessons and advice. Is there anything you wish you had known 1 or 2 years ago? Yeah, good question. Being kinder to myself. VJ and I have really talked about this a lot, but I'm going to stress this: being kind to yourself. I've literally spent weeks, and I'm sure VJ can also agree. There's like you spent weeks working your ass off, absolutely working your ass off, and you come out of that week and you're like, why did I have to do that to myself? Thinking back 2 years ago, and in software engineering in particular, that grind is always going to be there. That grind is never ending, no matter where you go. That mountain of knowledge is never getting any smaller. It's going to get bigger, and maybe really too big for you, but that's okay. You don't really need to know everything. it's okay to not know everything. It's okay to just like, okay, I want to get good at one thing and then I want to move to something else and learn the other thing. That's totally fine. I think a lot of lessons was also like kind of talked about, you know, health is a big thing for me. Working out and talking regularly with whatever methods or approaches that you have for yourself, religion, therapists, whatever works for you. Find your safe space and find your methods of how you cope, honestly. If you don't, you really will burn yourself out. And I'll say the story to kind of iterate that. My third attempt into LEAP, I actually literally almost gave up software engineering. Literally almost gave up. I was like, I'm done coding. I'm so done with it. I can't do this anymore. And it was all burnout. It really was. I still loved it. But I couldn't do it anymore. And that's when someone told me the darkest is at the darkest is at dawn, or something along those lines. So it really was that case for me. And yeah, hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, like, I mean, like, and obviously, like, I just want to ask you too, like, are you like almost at the end of your slides? Because I want to give you the opportunity to obviously finish, like, if you're still working on it.
Oh yeah, totally. The last thing is I just want to end the something with a few quotes at the end of the presentation. So or at the end of the meetup. So feel free to say anything.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, like, just more stuff, you know. I feel like, you know, the thing that people probably really want to know is like, what stack did you study? You know, or like what specific technical things did you do day to day that made you like now working at Microsoft, right? And I think maybe actually if you want to give some input, that would be really great. And then I think like I can also add to it.
Yeah, and there's a particular reason why I didn't want to add that in here. Was because in my opinion, there's not one way to do it. No matter especially with what Coding Dojo taught me, is that no matter what stack you pick, if you're a good software engineer, you can bring yourself up and bring yourself to another stack, and that should be fine. It's not a matter of what stack you know of. And so when in terms of, if you're asking in more technical terms, I did a lot in JavaScript and TypeScript. So React is where I mostly lived in, a lot of front end side, and Node.js as well as a result of that. So I know React, I know a little bit of Angular, I know C# somewhat. I say no very loosely, even though I did create a game with using a Unity 3D. And for work, I use TypeScript and C#. And yeah.
So that's really great, actually. And, you know, I think, again, like people probably are going to like stalk your GitHub and your LinkedIn profile afterwards to try to figure out like, what exactly did you study? But yeah, you know, just like, I think in general too, right? Like, you know, the process with, you know, getting to a pretty big company, like I'm at Beachbody and I consider that as a success for myself because like that was like the first job for me to like crack beyond 6 figures. So like
Totally.
and I'm doing pretty well, you know, but the job comes with its challenges, right? And like I definitely have to know my stuff. I think Michelle, you kind of like talked about it too, right? Like you were saying like your first or one of your interviews was just like very simple, fizz buzz. And that kind of reminded me too, like the job that I used to work at before Beachbody, there was no interview. It was just, hey, I saw you on YouTube and I get that you're pretty good at coding, so you could probably do this job. And so I was like, oh, thank you. And so like, that was literally like how I got my job. The job before that, yeah, maybe like I answered like some, you know, tons of like leak code style questions, although I wouldn't call them that much leak code. I feel like, so if your goal is to like get into like FANG, right? Like, or like Microsoft or something like that, you know, like where you really want to be like that data structures and algorithms person, that, you know, like makes it to like super SWE 2 or 3 or whatever, then focus on that. That's what I'm gonna say, right? Like you probably really should focus on those skills, and a lot of that you can like learn out of college if you're in a college program, because it's built in. But if you're doing, we'll come back to that first. But if you're kind of like doing it self-course, like autodidact, then basically I would say there's a few programs you can look at. There's, you know, the algorithms and data structures books. I think there's one called CLRS. That's like the, you know, the term or the shorthand for like this big thick book that you can get that talks about data structures and algorithms. You can practice with a group, and I've been thinking about like doing that with the Team Hack project that I have in the background. So Team Hack is actually part of like this HackBuddy group where every 2 weeks or so we'll meet up just to like learn about coding or practice for interviews and stuff like that. So and I also recommend it too, like if you have a network of people you want to like practice coding with, do that. Like these are more technical things that you can do to actually help yourself like see yourself further to where you want to be. When we talk about grinding really is like actually just like in an RPG, right? Like I think that's where the term comes from, like a video game, where you're kind of like every day, you know, like you're just doing, you know, like the fighting, like in the game, right? Like, but the fighting for you is actually, you're actually practicing and, you know, cracking through code, doing code samples, writing sandboxes for yourself, you know, proving to yourself that, you know, like how to like greenfield your own React Redux project, you know, like whatever they taught you in bootcamp, you know how to like set that up for yourself. So these are like things you can do like from a technical standpoint, like, you know, like tactical, I would say. And then, you know, like you get back to that point where you kind of like take a step back every now and then, you ask yourself, am I doing it right? You know, like, am I like just grinding really hard on just React? Should I like broaden my horizons? What are other people doing besides me? And then you start looking at your LinkedIn, or you start looking at like HackBuddy, this group, you start asking questions here, and you just kind of get feedback. And I think like that's like a huge thing for me, really. Like that's what got me out of like the, you know, like the pit that I was in personally. Like I kind of started thinking about like, okay, I can only get so good on my own, but if I have other people kind of like peer review or look at my work, or if I join a team of engineers that are doing really exciting things, right? And this could be like helpful to anybody here who is looking for a job. I kind of feel like if you find people that are like really geared to what you want to do and you work with them, you're going to learn a lot of stuff much faster and better than just going it alone. So I think like these are all like the things that, you know, you should probably be doing. At least this is my opinionated version, to just kind of like, you know, see yourself to that next level, to that whatever it is, like, or getting that career, you know, making more money or whatever.
So just to reiterate Vijay's point, I am no expert at DSA, data structure and algorithms. I am not good at all at it. I'm quite bad actually. So you'll be like, how did me get to Microsoft, right? Like, how is that possible? And thank God for Microsoft Leap, because yeah, that was basically my answer to that. But it's also like, and there's also, I mean, there's a lot of debate as well in the community about whether or not DSA is very useful to be a software engineer, and some might agree, some disagree. But the fact is that big tech FANG companies are still doing it, and until they move away from that, and if your aspirations are FANG companies, then unfortunately you're going to have to be on lead code and learning that. And in terms of what I like to use Algo Expert, because I really like their multi solution approach. Like I said, software engineering is all about creative problem solving. So that's why I really like multiple solutions, and that's why I really like their platform. So yeah.
Definitely. I think we have some more questions here. I guess like, do we have a good resource to learn C#?
Well, I think I also saw somewhere on TypeScript as well, something about TypeScript. Well, Microsoft did develop C# and TypeScript, so I would highly recommend those resources to start out. But I guess it's a matter of why are you trying to learn these languages as well, right? Like what purpose are you picking up this language for? Picking up a language takes time and effort to invest in. My question to you rather is, what purpose does it serve? If it's a matter of just learning the language just for your own curiosity, go for it. Do whatever you wish. But if it's just like, I'm kind of only a little bit interested in it, then maybe not. Then maybe what maybe you're more interested in is, they're both OOP languages. You could study about OOP a little bit as well. So yeah. So okay. Anyways, let's see. A couple more questions. Something I
Yeah.
think I saw about something about recruiters earlier, and just the quick, like, for personally, I don't use recruiters because I want to look for companies that I want to work for now in my career at this point. That being said, if you find a recruiter that you want to work for, I highly recommend you nurturing that relationship. Continue to follow up with them. If you do, you reach out to them and you fill out their forms, whatever it is. And yeah. Okay.
It also depends on the recruiter thing, right? Like, so I feel like, yes, like in general, like you should definitely like apply on your own because you'll probably get more success that way. But with the recruiter, like you have to remember it's their job to fill roles. And so they may not care specifically for you, like, right? Like they might just be trying to put you into a role. Like, and so you have to kind of treat it that way. But if you can nurture that relationship, then it's a better deal. And I think like recruiters, some of them, if they're doing their job right, are starting to get better at that, like learning how to nurture roles and finding good fits. But at the same time, it's always still going to be your responsibility to find your own job. I think like that's a key point
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they have their own self-interest. So think of it that way. And you have your own self-interest as well. That's why you follow up. So yeah. Okay.
Lindsay has a
Go
good
ahead.
question here, I think, too. She says, it's difficult to send out questions into the void about programming and finding right solutions. So like, are you talking about like, posting questions to Stack Overflow or, to our community, or like what exactly are you saying
Yeah.
if you want to come online here?
And feel free to get off your camera. I mean, turn on your cameras and ask questions. You don't have to just post in the chat. We're happy to talk to you.
It looks like she wrote in the chat. So she says Googling. So do you want me to answer this? Do you want to answer this? Googling.
Oh, geez. Oh, that's a long one. Why don't you give it a shot?
Okay, just to be like really like, because I feel like all these questions again open up a can of worms, but right, like in this day and age, like what does Googling mean? And I kind of feel like when you're a programmer and you're looking for answers to stuff, like a lot of times you want to be very specific about like the question you have, right? Like if you start off with a very broad question, like you may not get the best results. So, like if you say, what is closure, right? You're going to obviously get like a whole bunch of different meanings for closure, right? It could mean closing a store, and it could mean JavaScript closure, whatever, right? So then you have to kind of like specify like what is the context. So you might say, what is JavaScript closure, right? And so now you're like kind of down like a filter, right? You're getting better search results. Then you kind of like say, how does JavaScript closure work in ES6, right? Then you're a little bit more specific. Then like if you're having like some kind of problem with closures, you can start looking through like, some of the top sites like Stack Overflow, right? Like that's like the big number one that everybody still uses even to this day. You can look Quora. Quora is like a really good site. You can look at Hacker News. You can look at tutorials from like Dev2 and Medium. Those are really popular. And then, if you can't find the answer on Google, right, then what you could do is you could start asking within your communities, right? Like if you've been networking a lot, then maybe the answer is like easier to ask somebody like on Discord. Hey, you know what? I don't know what this is. What do you think this is? In this day and age, I really find that like I can get a lot of my questions answered way faster if I just talk to like the smartest people I know, from my network, right? And like I spend a good deal, like just really, maybe like the last like 2 years, like building up a network for myself. But honestly, like, I mean, if I don't know something, I can just like find somebody who probably knows a little bit about it, ask them a question. Sometimes like they're available by Zoom, right? Or like Google Meets. And then you could talk about it for like 10 minutes. And then they point me to the right resources, and that works so much better. So for example, like I was actually like looking up the question, oh, how do I learn, all the stuff I need to know for data structures and algorithms, right? And I got somebody from Google in my network to kind of give a lot of great advice, like, oh, these are the books I read. These are the, problems that I'm solving. These are the courses I recommend. And I was just like, oh, thank you. Like, this is what I needed, right? So I know a lot of people like to use the word, oh, can I Google this search result and maybe get the answer? But sometimes you need to go outside of that mindset where it's like, oh, just Google searching is enough. Like Google searching, like go beyond that. Like pretend it was like the old days, like the library or something. You'd go to the library too, and look up the answer, or you'd ask your circle of friends. Don't just rely on like one search algorithm, if that makes sense.
So to kind of talk about VJ's point here, in my code base, in Microsoft code base, I can't really Google questions. I can't do that. I can Google questions about TypeScript or C#, but I can't really ask what this function does or what this thing does or whatever it is. So I can't really do that because there's no way that I can do that. Like you said, it's that network as well. Finding out who to ask questions is actually a very important skill that I've had to figure out how to learn for myself. And I'm still learning it, honestly, I really am. But figuring out how to ask, who to ask that question and what to ask that, and how to ask the question to get to the point quickly is something that's also a different skill on its own. So yeah, especially when you're working in older code bases where they're, for example, still using, I don't know, classes in React or something along those lines, right? You might be able to find the answer on Google or Stack Overflow, or you can ask the developer who's been here 10 years and say, hey, can you tell me what this does? Just briefly. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We have two other questions here. I think so the other question you had, Lindsay, was the only cohort location for upcoming software engineering classes in Silicon Valley, it's online, but would you apply to SoCal or wait for a location? Would you apply from SoCal to that location or wait for a location in SoCal?
So this is for Leap, right? Okay, so I can have a whole meetup about Leap, just so you know. And if you have very specific questions about it, I'm happy to answer them offline or something like that. But when it comes to Leap, and if it says it's in Silicon Valley, there's a small expectation you may have to move there. And why I say that is for my cohort, I had to do it online as well, even though the location said Washington in Redmond, which is the headquarters of Microsoft. So when I accepted the offer to move to go into Microsoft as a full-time employee, there's also an expectation for me to move there, which is why I'm moving there next year. So even though it does say Silicon Valley, at the very least you're still in California. That's what I would say. But it's up to you. What we can have a whole conversation about the benefits and the negatives of Microsoft Leap. But it's again totally up to you. But if it's online, what's really stopping you, I guess. That's the better question. Yeah.
Yeah, do it. Like Disney says, right? Just go for it. Yeah, doesn't
Yeah.
hurt to try.
Like
So
I said,
then,
it took me 3 attempts, so doesn't hurt to try at all.
The other question is from Aaron. Which skill do you think is the most sought after in software engineering position? And again, I think this varies, right, Michelle?
I think this one will vary on who you talk to. It really will. VG, do you want to answer this one and see what your opinion is first, I guess?
Sure. I mean, like, the short answer is that it varies. Like, the longer answer is that, like, or the better answer is it, like I'm going to treat this like this is a real interview, okay? So like in a real interview, they always ask you at some point, what do you bring to the table, right? Like that's the question, right? So what do you bring to the table? And I think like that's when you would say like what you think you're really good at, because that's the skill that they're going to be really after, right? Like they want like what you know, like they want your knowledge base. So like you can kind of go on trends. You can say like, oh yeah, React is a popular sought out skill, so I better know this. And so at the end of the day though, if that's your skill, you're going to bring that to the table. And so they could say, what do you bring to the table? Well, it's React, you know, and but if you think beyond that, right? If you think about like okay, like you're applying to Apple or you're applying to, you know, Netflix or something like that. What is it that you really bring to the table? It's not the React. It's the solutions that you're able to build for the business, right? And so, you know, like those are where you start thinking about bigger, more abstract things like, oh, I'm really good at animation, you know, with JavaScript. And these are the things that I've designed, you know, in my bootcamp or in my career experience so far. And, you know, also as my passion, like these are the things that, you know, I'm really working on now. And I wanted to try like you could even do this right now. Go to the Apple website, right? And I sometimes think about this myself. Go to the Apple website, look at like a lot of their sales pages, and just think like, how is this built? And then look at the source code. And then like, I guarantee you, it's not just React or like, you know, like some framework that's open source. A lot of times like these companies don't even use open source frameworks. They have to use their own internal thing because they don't want to use the competitors. So think about that as well. And think about, okay, like if I were to build this for real, how would I do this without a React? Because that's what you actually bring to the table then. Like you're able to be a little bit more flexible. You're not just being like you know, cookie cutter, if that, you know, like just trying to like fit a role and, you know, like you're easily swappable out with the next cookie cutter person, if that makes sense.
Yeah. 100%
yeah.
agree. That answer is so hard. That question is really hard to answer because it's just there's just no right answer to this. There really isn't. I kind of want to say like what VJ said, it's the whole package what you bring to the table in the end, right? You can say I have we'll just take me as an example. I have a lot of experience with customers, so I have a lot of empathy for them, and I am very good at understanding what they want or trying to understand what they want or asking the right questions on what they want, and then writing the right solutions to those problems they have. I can say that I'm good at solving problems on my own. I'm self-sufficient in that way. And you can go on and on and on about that. It's so hard to answer that question. It really is. But I kind of want to say one thing is that in all tech companies, and I'm going to go business again because I'm a business person. In all tech companies, in my opinion, their currency is innovation. When you stop innovating, that tech company dies. So essentially, the way how I see an engineer or an engineer of one of those tech companies, that you should be able to innovate. And what that means, there's a lot of words that what that means is embrace failure, keep trying, try different things. There's so many products out there. Like for example, for Microsoft, they created a product before Microsoft Edge, and that's how it evolved into Microsoft Edge. They learn from that failures, and it goes on and on and on. So as an engineer, I feel like one of the biggest things is also that innovation there. So yeah, hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, never stop innovating. Like honestly, like if you want to be like, you know, baller status someday, right? If you want to make like the big money, right? Like I think it comes back down to like, what do you want to do with the skills you have? And that could be any point in time, right? Like you just kind of think about it like, okay, so I know this thing, like what am I going to do with it? And then you try to like make a feature, right? Or you try to make like some kind of like cool, you know, it doesn't matter if it's like it's not the best thing. At least if you try, you're in a good position, and then you could try to find the resources to make it better with time. um you know, but you know, just like you just kind of want to think about like what is it that you bring to the table. Some questions here, I guess, like, you know, so I'm going to summarize what you wrote, Grace. And I think that you're kind of saying that there's a lot of different boot camps to choose from. Any advice on like picking, you know, like a really good one, a solid one for the best value, the best price? Any thoughts on that, Michelle?
Yeah, so many. I've got a lot on that one. So there's a lot of boot camps out there. There's a couple things you need to think about when you're thinking about going into boot camps. Most of them are for profit. That means that they are looking to get profit out of, you know, having you enter the boot camp and whatnot. So keep that in mind when you choose a boot camp. And there are some that are non-for-profits, and I've seen a few out there, but those are less common and they're harder to get in as far as I know. For me, I went into an in-person Coding Dojo bootcamp that was located in the OC area before they closed the location. But I did enjoy being in person much more than I did in online because I was able to connect easier with people there. Like I said, I'm still in touch with a couple of the instructors from back then. And when it comes to the best value, oh geez, there is a lot of things to consider here. There is the financial part, which is how much money do you want to spend on this? There is the whole, you know, how long do you want to be in a boot camp? Because I know there's some that's like 9 months long. There's some that's like 4 months long, 3 months, you know, like what is your availability of commitment here? Also, are you looking for part-time, full-time? You know, that there's a lot of options, there's a lot of variables to think about there. Choosing the right one, I think one of my favorite advices to give is figure out your learning style. And what I mean by learning style, I mean, how do you best learn? Do you prefer, can you learn on your own with some Stack Overflow questions or some Udemy course or something along those lines? Or do you prefer like a classroom setting? Someone to have an interactive kind of education with you. So that's something to really consider about. Choose the right bootcamp that fits your learning style the best, because if you intend to spend 10, 15 grand into a bootcamp, then it better work for you. Another one is what kind of prospects does it give? Like I said, one of the reasons why I picked Coding Dojo was because they had a C# stack and very few boot camps out there. I don't know if that's the case right now, but at that time they didn't have that many out there. So I was like, okay, I really like that. And I had shopped around as well. I think I tried Thinkful, Flatiron, and Sabio, which is also a local boot camp around here. And I had gotten to all 4 of them. It was a matter of which one do I want to pick. And like I said, I went to Coding Dojo because I think it fit my learning style best. One of the things I really like what they did is they focused on a little bit of data structure and algorithms. So they spent every 1 hour in the morning doing that. But again, it kind of depends. You know, I would say that Coding Dojo, they have a heavy emphasis on kind of the full stack approach, you know, the front end and back end. Some boot camps out there, and correct me if I'm wrong. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I believe boot camps like Thinkful, maybe they focus more on the front end side. If you're more into the design side of things, you know, feel free to do that. Feel free to choose that one. Don't choose a bootcamp that is not your fit. I know someone who went to Coding Dojo with me who's clearly far more creative than what Coding Dojo is teaching, or was teaching, excuse me. And I can tell you that he did not have a good time. He's not really considering becoming an engineer as a result of it. So find your best fit and have a lot of moments of self-reflection, what that actually means. Program languages, like I said, after a while, you can kind of pick up, you can kind of pick up different languages later on. What you learn first, it's fine to learn whatever it is. You don't have to stick to one thing and stick to that only. You can learn other languages later. Hopefully that answers your question, Grace. If you want to talk more offline, I'm happy to do so as well.
Yeah, we have one more question, and I think like we can start winding down because it is almost 7:30 here. And then, obviously, like if you all have more questions as well, just reach out to myself or Michelle. And we'll come to your question real quick, Aaron, but like just to kind of give people listening here and towards the end, some basic information about like how to find myself or Michelle. So there's two websites you can use. There's the JavaScript LA website, which is what we usually use for JavaScript meetups. For software engineering meetups, we kind of say HackBuddy. And so like that's why there's two different names. But so I'm going to drop a link. I'm going to drop a couple links in the chat for now. So the JavaScript LA one is for the website if you want to see what meetups are upcoming, if you want to suggest meetups. We also have a Discord channel where you can kind of like ask us questions like right now, right? Like you can be like, hey, I really like this meetup. I just want to keep talking to you like after the meetup. Then basically you can chat with us on Discord. I use Discord all the time. It's like my favorite thing. So definitely sign up on there. Like if you're interested in the video and you want to be like, I want to watch this again sometime, where do I find the video? The videos are always at youtube.com/hackbuddyorg. We kind of brand all of our stuff as hackbuddyorg. So if you look for us on social media, it'll also be like twitter.com/hackbuddyorg, facebook.com/hackbuddyorg. We're not really using like Facebook and Twitter as much as we probably should be, but I think like these are like covering most of your bases, like Discord, YouTube. That's kind of like the basis. So feel free to reach out. And then we do have a team that meets together and tries to practice for like coding in the real world. That's led by me. It's called Team Hack. And like we're still trying to figure out like our own schedule, and it's brand new, and like we're kind of greenfielding it as we go. So self-correcting, right? Like agile style iterative process. But I think like it's really cool because it's a chance to kind of learn like how to code for real, work on some interesting projects like React, TypeScript, or greenfield your own projects, if you will. You can also just kind of use it as a resource, like if you don't feel like coding, but you just want to ask questions like for mentoring. You can definitely do that, and like you can ask me or like any of the people there like for time, and we can go through like interview questions or practice things around. At some point, I may turn that into like a little bit of a membership program. Like that might be like a subscribe thing, but like for now, I'm just kind of like keeping it like free, like this first year where I'm just kind of like throwing it out. And that's how we'll fund like this group and like, continue to grow it and make it cooler and more useful for everyone, because that's really our mission, to like help everybody, who wants to be a better programmer, really be a better programmer. So those are the links. And then of course, Michelle's presentation will be available there as well.
Yep, and I have my contact information at the bottom, at the very end, I think, of the slides. So you'll be able to pick it up from there. But basically, I'm very much behind on my LinkedIn messages. So if you're reaching out to me there, I'm so sorry. I will promise to get back to you. And yeah, I also have my Discord handle and my email later in the slides as well. So yeah. do we want to answer the last questions that we
Yeah,
have?
yeah, we have a little bit of time, so we can.
Okay.
And you can decide like too, like if you want to, you know, sign off or any of that right now. Like, I think it's just basically like he was asking about free code camp. So like,
Yeah.
real quick, like my 2 cents, free code camp is awesome. Use it. I use it still even to this day. But I use it as a resource, right? Like I don't like view any of the certificates that I get or even the stuff I get from Udemy or Udacity or anything like that as like, you know, gold. Like, oh yeah, like I got this now. I'm like, you know, the genius or something like that. Like, I just kind of like view it as like, okay, like this helped me learn something. Where you have to prove yourself in work, right? Like in the real world is actually building the real thing, you know, and then that's when like your employer gives you like that badge of honor or the medal of honor, right? Like otherwise like none of these certificates really mean anything other than, and you could say that even about a degree. Like you could go to like the finest university, but if you're not able to like actually do the real work, then it doesn't matter. So it's kind of like what my opinion is.
Yeah, I basically have the same opinion about that. I personally don't use free code camp. I kind of used it when I first started out, kind of learning how to code kind of thing. But like VJ said, it's a learning resource. There are plenty out there. It's a matter of finding the right one for you. So yeah. Just before we get into any other questions, I just want to end the kind of this whole thing a little bit on kind of what I like to call them my mottos a little bit, my life's mottos. So the first one is making the impossible possible. Like I said at the very beginning, I was told that I would never be able to become a software engineer by very close people of mine. And this quote has always stuck with me since basically my elementary school. And yeah, making the impossible possible means just trusting yourself to make that possible. Build your story. Build a story that you want to build for yourself and don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. And this is a quote I kind of created the last one is a quote I kind of created when I was in Leap. And this is something that I personally like. Be authentic, bold, curious, passionate, persistent, resilient, and finally yourself. So yeah, and that's it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, VJ, for allowing me to talk here, and love the community that you built. And yeah, well, I'll stick around if there's any more questions, but yeah, and here's my contact info as well.
Wonderful. Thank you again for presenting with us. This was a great talk. And obviously, thank you to everybody who came. Like, really appreciate your support. Really value you as part of being in this community. Hope to see you all again at our next meetups, as well as like on Discord, right? Like I truly mean this from the bottom of my heart. I do want to help. I want to help other people. I find joy in doing that. I feel like it makes me a better engineer because people put me on the spot, and like, you know, I have to learn like whatever they might be like studying or like, you know, but I think that's how you get better. Like you just like, you practice, you learn with others, you find the right circle of people to, you know, mesh with, and you just challenge each other and you just get better together. And I think that's very much in my DNA. So I'm glad, you know, like there's a lot of interest in this, and I'm glad Michelle is, you know, supporting this community as well. So thank you all again. All right. If nothing else, we'll see you all at the next meetup or online Discord, or watch some of the YouTube videos and recommend some new stuff that we should probably talk about, because we're always listening for your opinions. All right. See ya.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye. Good night.
Everybody.